everybody, welcome to another episode of the Comic Source. Continuing to count down to Christmas, our 12 days of the Comic Source, and I have a creator on that I consider a friend, an amazing person. You know, beyond loving his work, I just love him as a guy. He's such a positive influence, and just always great to see him. So, Liam Sharp, welcome back to the show, Liam. Thanks for taking the time.
Hello, mate. It's good to be on, and yes, likewise, great to see you too. Thanks for that very warm intro.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it was cool to see you at New York Comic Con this last year. Even hung out a little bit at Frank Cho's showing at the gallery, which was a heck of a lot of fun. But I've been meaning to have you on. I mean, we've talked, we talk periodically, run into each other at conventions, what have you. But I was thinking back to the last time we had you on. You've done so much since then. I don't think we've had you on since like Starhenge and a lot of this other stuff. So yeah, it's one of those things where when I become friends with somebody, then I almost feel like, well, I talk to him all the time, so I don't necessarily bring him on. You know what I mean?
I know, but also, where does the time go? It
Oh
just
yeah,
gets by, doesn't it?
yeah,
It's especially when you're busy.
yeah. So yeah,
At least,
even back across the pond now.
right. I know, home again, which is great. It's been lovely to be back. We had 12 years in the US. And we're still citizens, so it's home as well as here. But somebody said it the other day, it's like parents come with an expiration date. And so the kids moved on and they moved out, and we just found ourselves in California, a long way from everybody we sort of love, and thought, we need to get home.
Yeah, yeah.
Spend a bit of time with people we haven't seen enough of over the last 12 years. So it's been really, really great. And, I'm back in my hometown, which I never expected to be. I spent most of my young life trying to escape the place, and now I've properly fallen in love with it.
It's great, and you picked a good time to, whether you're back there for good or just taking a break. You picked a good time. I mean, I kind of wish I could, as crazy as things are in the U.S., not a bad time to be somewhere else. But so we're going to talk, a little bit about, Liam has been on again, multiple times in the past. I encourage you guys to all go and check out the previous interviews. We'll kind of go over some of his previous stuff, but really, kind of the majority of what I want to talk about today is you finally doing a book at Image for Todd McFarlane. You had your Starhenge. We'll touch on that as well over at Image. I was so happy to see you do that. You and I talked about it. You had maybe an opportunity to go to Image super early in your career, kind of stuck with Marvel, and then everything that happened in between, and now to finally be over there and working with Todd and
Mhm.
doing a book that is in the Spawn mythos, but is so it's just you. It's you to a T, celebrating all the things that you love. So, for those that aren't familiar out there in the audience and kind of don't understand what Spawn Dark Ages is, give us the synopsis. How would you describe it to somebody who's looking to jump on?
Well, I did do a number of issues of Dark Ages back in the 90s, thinking around
Okay,
98
gotcha.
maybe.
Yeah.
Um, and that was written by Brian Holguin, coloured by Brian Haberlin. Very different kind of a beast, really. It was much closer to medieval period.
Hmm.
So right at the end of the Dark Ages, and it's really not like this one at all. I did have a good time on that one, but I forget how many issues I did, something like 14 or something. Um, and eventually it went on, they got a different team on it, and it changed, the whole vibe changed quite a lot. And so, it always felt like it was something that didn't perhaps end as well as I would have liked it to have. So it felt sort of like unfinished business, really.
Hmm.
I think there was a little bit of confusion around the desires for what that book was back then. And anyway, that's a long time ago. It's a very long time ago. It's 20, what's that, 25 years, more than. So it was odd how it worked out. sometimes these things you get these moments that open up in your work, and I was meant to be doing something else. It fell through, and I sat back and thought, well, what should I be doing right now? Um, and I saw that Spawn was getting a real kind of renaissance, all these books were coming out, and it was quite exciting. Um, and they seemed to be doing well, and there seemed to be a lot of attention on it. And I just thought, I wonder if anyone's doing the Dark Ages book. Uh, so I kind of had a little look, and it didn't appear to be the case. So I basically reached out to Todd, and heard back within an hour,
Wow.
which was amazing. And we were on the phone within 2 or 3 days, and he was really keen. So that was just before we left America. It took a little bit of a while. Then I had an EXO book to finish up, and there was just some juggling to do with the move and all of this kind of stuff before I could start. But yeah, once I hit the ground with it, I hit the ground running. So it's actually been finished for quite a long time. And I thought with this one that, to answer your question, sorry, it's a bit long-winded, that I should go to the beginning of the Dark Ages and really start from scratch and make it a book that anyone could pick up, regardless of whether they know anything about Spawn or previous Dark Ages book or anything. That they could just pick it up and they could dive in and they could just embrace this whole world. And depending on how it goes, we could take it, because again, like I say, I'm starting it right at the beginning of the Dark Ages in 5th century Britain. Um, that we can, if it goes well, move all the way through the Dark Ages, uh, and have a bunch of fun with a bunch of adventures. This one's a real, I would say it's it's probably the most Shakespearean thing I've ever written, and it's really a melodrama. It's political, it's historical, it's based in, like, as I say, fifth century Britain, so it's post-Roman Britain. It takes the King Aurelianus, who was a historic figure, but kind of lost to time, and he's been cited as a possible template for King Arthur, even Merlin too, although I can't really see how that could be the case. Um, and so it's post-Roman Britain in the 5th century, and you're in this position where you've got the Hibernians, who will later be the Irish, invading from the east. You've got the Saxons raiding the coasts in the west and very much trying to invade the country. And then you've got this threat of the brain dead. The Scottish, the Picts up in Scotland, wanting to invade from the north. And then, we've got this other thing that's quite interesting at that time, where the Romans have all been converted to Christianity. The king is Christian, but there's the remnants of the Celtic faith, and the paganism of the country, that is existing in the ruins of Londinium, and our Spawn in the story is called Earl King Mulgrave, and he is sort of overseeing the haunted ruins of Londinium, which have overgrown into a massive forest. And basically he sort of takes the role of the Lord of the Wild Hunt that has been raiding the country and stealing away women and children and people and taking them off with him, except that's not necessarily the truth. So that's the setup, and really it's about the king trying to find Spawn, and in order to make an alliance with him, because he sees that together they have much more of an opportunity to unite the Britain, and to make it a stronghold together. much better together than if they're solo. So that's the setup.
Yeah, I mean, the king, he really does feel, you get this sense of how desperate he is in the first issue. So the first issue's out, everybody, came out in November. Next issue, issue two, comes out actually on New Year's Eve, on the 31st. But
Mm.
yeah, early on, there's this desperation. He's being attacked from all sides, both physically, with all these different factions that you were mentioning, but also, yeah, that transition from, he seems a little uncomfortable in his Christianity. I'll say it's kind of, so he's got that going on. And then going to seek out Spawn, but not just any Spawn. He's called the Devil Spawn to make this pact because, as you say, they're stronger together. But I get this sense, and especially knowing how you love to play with kind of the ancient political stuff, like a deal with the devil. I mean, it is Devil Spawn, so it is a literal deal with the devil, but it's also like, he's attacked from all sides. I wonder if he's going to be safe within his own camp by making this deal, right? Does the Devil Spawn
Well,
have his own
the
designs?
devil spawn moniker really comes from, as we find out, a character called Kentigern, who's a priest, also based on a character that pops up in some of the Merlin mythology. Um, there's a Saint Kentigern that is tied into the Merlin mythology. This is a different Kentigern, but that's where I took the name. Uh, the he has his own agenda, let's say, and he's the one that seeded this notion of Spawn being a devil related entity, whereas actually it's more that he's much more tied into the pagan beliefs of the past. Um, one of the things when I was speaking to Thomas at McFarlane, the editor, who's been fantastic to work with, was really it's very broad, the premise, and the main thing we were sticking to was that it's less that Spawn is tied into a literal hell, but he's more of an agent of Gaia more than anything else.
Mm.
And so through that, through the Celtic thing, I've tied him into Danu, which is the Irish version of the Earth Mother character. Um, so it's a sort of druidic, Celtic, much more ancient belief system that this Spawn is tied into. Apart from that, I don't really give anything away about his history at all. He's almost like a man with no name, and no past. He can't remember where his origin is. It's steeped in it, it's just a long time ago. We know that, and he has this druidess called Danunis, which is it's a amalgam of the goddess Danu and Canunis. So it's the mother and death and nature and all of those things all tied together. And she is like his druidess that takes care of him, but also there becomes this relationship between Aurelianus and her as the story progresses. So it all becomes very tied up. But he's also got his best friend who loses an arm in the first issue, and is a very loyal, basically servant of Rome and the king, and Christian Rome, and so there's tension there as well. Yeah, it's really a political melodrama, as I say. It's less about blood and guts and gore. I hope some people aren't disappointed by that than it is about a real kind of tug of war between these characters, and you know lots of debates and issues around what is moral and what is right for the country and what is right for the king and for everybody else, really, and how you attempt to unite a citizenship of the people who are so divided, which again is something we're all sort of scratching our heads over at the moment, about at the moment, because I've never known more divided times. So Very different setup, of course, but yeah, it's the same problems.
Yeah, which is in a way disheartening. But I will say, I know how much you love to tell these type of stories, especially to go back and mine ancient history. Especially when it's kind of your own ancestors. But what an incredible universe to do this in. Like this is the perfect universe because you're talking about having amazing visuals, which we'll talk about the look of the book in a little bit, but having amazing visuals, having action that's really cool, kind of eye candy, whatever, but still having the kind of foundation, I guess you could say, to be able to tell these kind of political stories and ask the questions, what is moral, what is right, what is a hero, what like that. Those are inherent to the Spawn character, right, from the earliest days that Todd created. Al Simmons, the whole reason he came back because of his wife. His powers are from hell, but he's trying to do good. Like it's just the perfect setting to tell that kind of story. So you mentioned having done some Dark Ages before, and then when Spawn was undergoing this renaissance, as you said, reaching out to Todd, was that all kind of wrapped up, in your initial idea for the story, or as you kind of got the green light and started building it out, did that sort of grow organically?
It grew organically. I think I had the sense that doing it from the 5th century and starting right back at the beginning, I'm pretty sure I pitched that. I knew that was a sandpit that I could play in because I did a lot of research for that for Starhenge.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also a part of history and a part of, I guess, the old mythological origins of the British, mythology around Arthur and Merlin, all of that kind of stuff. That it's really where it all sort of kicks off, and you find the sort of nexus of all of those stories. So it was. I knew that I was going to have fun with it if I could, if I if they went for it. I knew I'd be all right in that sandbox. So yeah, it was. I was just really pleased that he snapped my hand off really.
Yeah.
uh, and it was, you can tell I put an awful lot of work into the art. I wanted it to I wanted it to feel grounded. It's something I tell people more and more, actually, especially people wanting to get into the industry. One of the things I really say that is important is the world building side of it. And if you can put in stuff into the backgrounds that is well researched and feels authentic. And obviously this isn't history, so there are some liberties taken.
Mm-hmm.
But if you build a world that feels believable, that's half the battle won. And part of that is building something that you recognize as solid and grounded, and that feels like it has been pulled out of a historical place. I mean, obviously, if you're doing something science fiction, that's different. You're making stuff up, but if you can make any of those things feel grounded, then it's worth the effort. I suppose what I'm saying there is I did a lot of the world building to make it feel as realistic as possible. For the first issues. As it goes on and it gets more intense and it gets more kind of twisted and angry, the art actually sort of loosens up a little bit before it tightens again right at the end in the 6th issue. So it gets much more dark and less concerned with the insane details from the first issue. Uh, but it it becomes more kinetic and more kind of just darker, I think, as people will see. But again, that's all. These are the tools of the trade that you bring in. I had sort of. It's funny. I had initially thought I'm going to do all of it like incredibly tightly rendered, but as I got to those pages, it was like this is wrong. If I spend too long rendering these backgrounds, then it'll distract away from the kinetic nature of the storytelling. So you do have to bear those sort of things in mind. You don't want to be stopping people dead. I think when you're building the world and you're introducing them to it, then it doesn't matter if you slow them down for a minute and let them have a look around, and be in that place with you. Um, but yeah, once the story's really moving, you don't want them to be stopping dead. So
Yeah, you got
yeah,
to keep the momentum going.
yeah, exactly. So I'm curious to see the whole thing out. Actually, I want to. At some point, I'm looking forward to just sitting down with all 6 issues and reading them through cover to cover, because that you don't really have a full sense of the flow of anything until you can do that. But I've worked so hard on these scripts. Yeah, I know you've read it, so it's very, I was taking a bit of a chance with the oldie the oldie worldy language, the Celtic words that I've put in there, and there's more and more as it goes on. I think
Yeah.
there's only one issue that doesn't have a glossary.
Yeah, I was gonna
Uh,
say the glossary in the back. I thought that was really intriguing because yeah, there was a couple words as I was reading. I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to go look that up, and then they were in the back, so that was great. Um, but just to let everybody know, if you're checking us out on YouTube, the cover that is the devil spawn that's there. That's not Alien Honest, but he's very he's imposing. And then I love this full splash page when we get to see the difference in size, because as big as he is and imposing as he is, Devil Spawn towers over him, which really took me back. And that was such a just a great visual image. Um, to
well, he's also stoned off his head when he meets him, which is all part of the initiation process. So
yeah,
he's been given that broth by the druidess, really as a means to test his mettle and to make sure that he's speaking plainly, as much as anything. So, there's a scene where he sees the devil spawn. Well, that we cut back to it, and you see that he's got in one panel in like cloven hooves, and that is very much him hallucinating,
right,
But it's also a little nod to Canunus and a nod to fauns, and Canunus is a lot like Pan, who's a lot like Bacchus, um, and that the sort of the fauns of Greek mythology. And interestingly, actually, I was just in Athens and talking to our tour guide, who's a big comic fan, who was out there and took us all over the Acropolis and everything. And we were talking about some of the origins of these stories and everything. And I told him, I was rather delighted to be able to tell him a little bit of mythology that he wasn't aware of, and the connection between Britain and Greece via the Odyssey, which then becomes the Aeneid for the Roman. The Romans basically take the Greek myths and they co-opt them for their own mythology.
yeah,
And then the Aeneid was written by Virgil as a piece of propaganda, basically, for the emperor at the time, Augustus. And then Geoffrey of Monmouth does another thing. The reason that Virgil does that for Augustus is to tie him to the gods, so that basically he's saying that the emperors are the the, the children of the gods.
right, yeah,
Virgil founds Aeneas, who's basically Odysseus, um, sires the first Roman Empire emperor. So all the Roman gods are connected to all the emperors are connected to the Roman gods. Sorry, I'm trying to. This always really excites me, but it's also kind of you have to remember all the moving pieces. So so then what happens is Aeneas has a son. He's called Brutus. He goes to England. He becomes the progenitor of all of the kings of Britain. So when Arthur is born, he's literally connected to the Roman gods, hence the Greek gods, and that's why in that version of the story, the Arthurian version of the story, which we don't hear very often, he attempts to reclaim Rome and actually gets to the foot of the Alps before he returns to Britain, having conquered all of Europe and Iceland and Ireland in the process. And I love that kind of that sort of connection between these mythologies that people aren't necessarily aware of. And yeah, so the that look of those characters, the things like the cloven feet, which was co-opted again by Christians and turned into an imagery of the devil, was actually related right back to the Greeks and to fauns and to Pan and
Yeah, and the pagan religion and all, yeah, worship of nature. Yeah, I mean it's fascinating. It's such a great foundation, and there's such a richness to it, right? And you almost wonder, like, why don't more people kind of mine that to tell stories? Because there's a reason that those kind of myths and mythology and legends have lasted for millennia. Literally thousands of years.
I agree. I find it fascinating because until I'd read this, I had never heard of that connection of the kings of Britain to ancient Greece.
Yeah,
No, it took quite a bit of research before I got to the point where that sort of penny dropped, and I was like, hang on a second, this is amazing. Uh, these are stories that I need to be telling because if I've not heard it, and I've been reading this stuff for decades,
yeah.
there'll be a lot more people who have no idea about this at all. So it's kind of I feel like I found something that I need to share a lot more.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Well, one of the things, and you kind of mentioned it, especially the first issues, some really tight lines and pencils, and you and I have talked before, because you work digitally, and the ability to zoom in, but then you get lost in the details, and you got to, once it's shrunk down, we maybe don't even get to see it at the smaller size, so you gotta find that balance. But recently on things like Starhenge or your Green Lantern run that you did with Grant, you did more of a kind of a digital fantasy painting style, which I loved, and it has so much impact in art. But you've chosen to go back to doing kind of traditional line work with this. What factored into that decision? Did you just feel it was better suited for the story? Is it just wanting to keep things fresh for yourself? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I mean it's all of those things. These are traditionally done pages. They're black and white inked pages. The Which I've also been doing in the Conan work as well. I think I didn't want to lose that facility for a start. I am a big fan of black and white work, um, and there was another side too. With the advent of AI, people are finding it harder and harder to distinguish between what is painted digitally and what is AI generated. And I just thought, for this time, at this moment, while it is so contentious, and while a lot of creatives are fighting for their very existence, um, I need to go back to something much more traditional and just put the pen to paper. I I I still love doing the digital painted stuff. Occasionally, I've done covers over the last couple of years. It's really a pleasure, but I didn't want that to be the dominant thing that people were seeing at the minute. I wanted to show that I can still draw uh, and draw, in a traditional way. And I think as well with this material, I felt comfortable going really old school with it. So, I'm talking pre 90s now. This is inspired by the people I loved from the 70s, um, and even the 60s, really. And even earlier. So the people that are most influential in the work that I'm doing here are your Barry Smiths and your Bernie Wrightsons, your Jeff Joneses, and Frazetta in his black and white drawings. There's always a bit of that in there. So I've really looked at them. I haven't tried it to be to follow any of the trends with it. I just got stuck in with, this very legacy approach to the work because it just felt right for the material. And I can say the same for the Conan stuff too. I thought, if I'm going to do Conan, I want it to look, especially Savage Swords, it's black and
Yeah,
white. I was so
yeah.
excited to get to do that. That was a proper bucket list thing. So to do that and get a 48-page story, I was going to go, I was going to try and channel something straight out of Savage Sword from the 70s, at the time that I fell in love with that material, and it seemed right for this material too. Uh, I know there has been a bit of a crossover with the Conan readership with this title. People from that readership have been enjoying it too, although it's only superficial. Aurelianus does look a bit like Conan in some of the
Yeah,
panels,
yeah.
but beyond that, it's a sword and sorcery. But it's a very different realm to Hyboria. Um, so yeah, it's been fun just relaxing and trusting myself to do this kind of legacy approach to art. I feel like I'm totally in legacy mode at the moment.
Well, I mean, having followed your career for as long as I had, I gotta say that this is some of the best. We're talking about traditional art. This is some of the best storytelling I think visually that you've ever done. And I sort of I wonder if doing things like Starhenge, where you're doing a different style, but also writing it and telling the story visually, and now coming back to a more traditional style, if that's kind of increased your ability to tell stories sequentially, because this grabs you right from the first page. You see that first page, and then you see him jump across the river, and he's climbing up the roots of the tree. Like those are just such impactful images that were conveying, not just the story moving forward, but such a sense of kind of the malevolence of the story, that the danger, that we were going somewhere. Like I just like it just grabbed me from the first couple of pages. So I don't know if you've heard that from any of your other fans or anybody who's read it, but I was just really impressed throughout with yeah, just the strength of the storytelling visually. I sort of, you mentioned kind of the old kind of flowery language and what have you, the Celtic terms, whatever. But I sort of felt like the storytelling was so strong. If there was ever a time where I didn't know what a word meant, it didn't pull me out of the story because the story was being told visually so well, if you know what I mean.
Good. um, I think I think when I'm writing my own stuff, it does make a difference. It's the story is very. I was explaining this to somebody the other day because people tend to think that comics are static, but they're not really. It's a form of performance, um, and really the panels are keyframes out of a moving story. So while what you're looking at is still in your head as a storyteller, it's part of a moving narrative,
Mm-hmm.
um, and you then picking the moments. So it's not really a static medium at all. And you're relying on the reader. This is why there's a connection between the reader and the creator. It is you're relying on the reader to partake because you're expecting them to fill the gaps
Right.
uh, what exists between the panels in the panel borders, and to go from one scene to the next, and to imagine, that process, what those characters are doing in between. So I think when it's your own story, you're running it backwards and forwards in your head, and you're playing out different scenarios, and you're playing, does this scenario work? Does that scenario work? Sometimes you're just going along with it, which is quite interesting. If you trust your subconscious and your storyteller, quite often your subconscious is way ahead of you and has already figured out what's coming. So you can sort of just trust the process when you're writing the scripts. Uh, and I think when it's yours, you're not trying to second guess what anybody else is going to be. Um, drawing for you for your script. You're not having to. I mean, when you're writing the script for somebody else, you're picking the keyframes. When you're writing it for yourself, you pick your own keyframes.
Right.
Um, and it's a little bit different, I think. But I think it's fair to say that next year I've been doing this for 40 years, and in that period, I have become a better storyteller. I wasn't great at storytelling when I was younger. I put too much store in the illustration and the quality of the artwork, and not enough store into the narrative and into the sequential art, the storytelling. I kind of, if we remember the early 90s was a time of pin-ups and
Yeah.
shots, big hero shots, and they were fantastic, and I loved them. And I remember poring over them, and being fully sort of invested in those fantastic sort of hero shots and everything. But it's not actually terrific storytelling,
Yeah.
and I was as guilty as anyone of doing that. These days, I kind of think, okay, if I'm going to have that moment, then it's got to have a reason. I used to, this is a terrible confession, really, but I used to get the scripts, and this is a lot of us did this. You'd look at the script and you'd look at the panels, and you'd find the one panel on any given page that you thought, oh, that's going to be fun to draw, and you'd make that the big panel
Yeah.
and fit all the others around it, and every page was like that. It makes for a pretty looking book, but it doesn't make for smooth storytelling necessarily.
Yeah.
Um,
But
and
here's the thing that we as fans, that's what we were digging back. Whereas, we're as guilty of kind of promoting that kind of pin-up type storytelling, as you were just giving us what we were asking for.
well, I mean, I was a fan too, so I liked it as much as anybody. And with a big bombastic story that isn't demanding too much from the reader, then that's fine.
Yeah.
I still think there's a place for that. I'm
Hmm.
not necessarily saying it's a terrible thing. And I can see for some superhero stuff, it's a good laugh to
Yeah.
have that kind of storytelling. But when you're introducing people to a world that is in the past and it's characters that you don't know, and you're using language that is particularly flowery, um, and I did try, incidentally, to do it in a modern vernacular, and it just didn't seem right. I just thought, it reminded me of the Thor books that Stanley would write and
Yeah.
do this Cod Shakespeare thing, and it actually did lend a kind of haughty, royal kind of vibe to the proceedings, and I just felt I needed to put that in to give to trust the audience, to trust the intelligence of the audience, and to let them enjoy it in the same way that I enjoyed it. These are some good words. Things like Jew beaters, which is such a great word. When you think Jew beater is a word for a coward,
Yeah.
but it's basically the notion of their feet slapping the grass as they're running away and beating the Jew out of the grass. That's such a great word, and there's so many other good words that I put in there, and things like the Baratus. I know I'm jumping around a bit, but that when you look into what would be a mighty rousing cry, and then it turns out that's what the Romans did when they ran into battle. They did this. They let fly a Baratus and all shouted. Nobody knows what that sounded like, but historically it was a thing. So, why not include these little things in there and references to Aurelianus's knowledge of Alexander the Great's father, Philip of Macedon, and his invention of the phalanx and all of that obviously fed down through history and was picked up by the Romans and so on and so forth. So there's all of these little things that if you are interested, you can look up and you can get into, and you can explore for yourself.
Well, I mean, having those little details in there where it doesn't again doesn't pull you out of the story, but it adds to the atmosphere. It makes it feel very immersive. You know, you feel like you're. It's a window into this world. It's a window into the past, which is fantastic. Um,
Well,
well,
that's nice to hear. You know, that's what I hoped.
yeah, yeah. No, it definitely worked, and I can't wait to read more. Um, but and one of the other things I couldn't help but be reminded. You know, you talk about being able to tell the story and writing for yourself. Um, but I get a little bit of vibe of this book that I don't hear enough people talking about when you want to talk about you writing and drawing and doing something, but that's set in a world that people are more familiar with. This Brave and the Bold story that you told years ago with Batman and Wonder Woman, where they go to this fantastical land and you're exploring myths of ancient Britain and so yeah, I got a little bit of a remembrance of this as well, which is still a fantastic book, and it's collected everybody. So I wanted to shout it out, and if you haven't checked it out, I encourage everybody to go and look at it. But the reason I wanted to bring it up to you, Liam, is that again, this is so long ago, and I feel like you have improved your art and your storytelling. Your writing. So if you were to compare the two, how do you feel like about this versus what you're doing in Spawn Dark Ages?
I'm really proud of the Brave and Bold, and I think as well it's gained in notoriety over the years. You know, people are still finding it. People are still doing reviews of it. I saw a big one that went up quite recently. You know, a proper big old write-up for it. It was
Nice.
really good praise. And the book itself on Amazon, when it first came out, it was like a 3-star kind of under the radar thing. I think it's 4.5 stars now. You know, and it's had hundreds of reviews that are really good. You know, it's becoming slowly a bit of a classic, I think. You know, it's becoming a seminal book from my library, which I'm really proud about. And I love that more and more people are still discovering it. Um, it is something I'm really proud of. Yeah, and I actually saw Dan Didio in Athens and thanked him because I don't think that I would have had the writing opportunities that I've had since if he hadn't trusted me to write that book.
Oh, that's
He
awesome.
really liked that book. You know, he was a supporter of the stuff that I brought to the table there. And really that kicked it off for me. After that, I've been able to write so much more. I'm mostly writing, pretty much writing all my stuff now. And it's been something I've wanted to do for so long because the writing side of it is an equal pleasure for me, and obviously I want to hone that. And having been around for as long as I've been, I kind of got to cram it in as much as I can now.
Yeah.
It's that horrible thing of knowing that especially 40 years in, I probably haven't got another 40 years ahead of me at the age of 57. So you just have to be realistic about it and go, okay, what's left to do, and whatever I do now, it's got to be something I'm really passionate about. And so far so good, really. I'm sort of tied up for the next year at the very least, which is great.
Yeah, that's great. That's great to hear. Well, and it's great to hear that people are discovering this because I recommend it to people all the time as well. And I was blown away, as you know, right from the first issue. I was reviewing it on the channel, I was telling people to pick it up. So, yeah, it's a fantastic story, everybody. So, if you're curious at all about the fantasy and the myths and fairies and Celtic lore and what have you, here's a great gateway that you can get in with some recognizable characters. You know who Wonder Woman is. You know who Batman is. Great. This would be great. Like dive into this, and then if you like this, oh, definitely check out Spawn Dark Ages. Uh,
It's a funny one too because a few people said, "Well, Batman doesn't really have much action in it." It's like, no, he's a detective.
yeah,
He's
yeah,
giants. They're magical giants. What's he going to do? It's like he doesn't even know if any of his stuff would work in there.
yeah,
So he's literally being a detective, which is why Dinah took him in there in the first place. Um, and I really like that aspect of it. I like that he has to use a hagstone to kind of to see through the spells that are in there, which is basically his, if he can't use a magnifying glass because he can't trust anything to be real, then he needs to find something else that's going to help him as a detective. And he is basically trying to solve a murder case in the realm of the gods. And I love that aspect of it. It doesn't bother me that he's not just beating people up on every page.
Yeah, and it's got a great twist as well at the end. So we're not going to spoil it here, but go and check it out for sure. And then if we're mentioning Wonder Woman, of course we have to talk about this. I mean, this is the book that brought you back into comics after you've been away for a little bit. This is the book where we first met, me interviewing at WonderCon when Rebirth was announced, and
I
we hit it
remember it
off,
well.
right away. And God, I did 16 interviews that day, just all of them one right after the other. My voice was shot, but yours was by far my favorite one. And it's so funny because I met and interviewed so many creators that day for the first time, you among them. And I think I'm still friends with all of them. Like, it was such a magical time, and it's great to see that DC's having kind of that renaissance again right now with Absolute and doing so well. But how are you feeling about this? You look back, with fondness. It brought you back. It's like, does it even seem real? I mean, you have so much perspective now. This was what, 2016, almost 10 years ago now. So yeah, what can you say about coming back with Wonder Woman, working with Nicola, working with Greg?
Oh, just a huge fondness. I we go through lots of cycles as creators, and sometimes it does feel like we've had our moment. Um, and I had definitely been there uh, prior to Wonder Woman. I had managed to chase a dream in terms of I'd come to the States, which is something I'd always wanted to do. I always dreamt of sort of living in California, which is something I was able to do. And to be involved in something as exciting as a startup, which I was, and all of those things were a big adventure. But they also quickly became obvious to me that that wasn't something I wanted to spend my life doing. I wasn't. No, I don't really want to be an executive. I want to be a creator. I'm an artist, and I'm a writer first and foremost, and I'm a sometime publisher as well. Um, and that's where my love lies, and that's the stuff I want to do. But that's not always choice. You can want to do that, but if the opportunities aren't there, then it can be very tough. And for a while, I just wasn't getting the opportunities. But I think moving to America was a help. I think it sort of signaled that I was a serious person, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That I was prepared to do something pretty big and drastic in order to, take care of business and to look after my family and to, the only, you can't you can't found a startup company in California out of Britain unless you're a pretty serious individual,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So I think it did mean that when I had meetings, especially because it was a digital storytelling company, when I had meetings with companies like DC and Marvel and everything, they started to see me in a very different light. So when I became available to work again, they didn't they didn't dismiss the idea, and it was really down to Jim Lee, bless him. I sent him I heard that it was becoming available, and I sent him this. It was a Red Sonja picture actually, but I had it on my desktop, and I thought this is kind of a pre-Raphaelite, very romantic fantasy version of Diana, and I just thought, I could do Wonder Woman like that, and I couldn't think of a time when I'd seen anything quite like it. So I sent that to Jim Lee, and he was great. He just championed me and basically said, "No, we'd really love you to do that. That's great. I'm going to go back for you," which he did. Um, and initially I had a different writer, and then eventually it settled on Greg, and then the whole thing of it being coming out every 2 weeks meant that they had to have two artists on it. I was meant to be the lead artist on it, but Nicola's dream had always been to do year one, and I'm not going to get in the way of someone who's a massive Wonder Woman fan.
Right. Yeah.
It was clear that year one was going to be the big one. That who doesn't want to draw a year one of a character?
Yeah.
Everyone does, but just the logic of it was like, hang on a second, look at my work, look at Nicola, Nicola's such a lovely person. There's no way I was going to say, no, it's mine. You go draw the scary 10 years on story with in the jungle, and I'll draw, the lovely love story, Themyscira story, just because out of bloody mindedness that I'm going to be the one who gets that one. So that was an interesting time, but I think it was the right decision. I'm incredibly proud of how it went. I look back at the work and I think, God, I came a long way in that time. And I think DC getting behind me and giving me an awful lot of work. I mean, it was just back to back for 8 years. I didn't have a break in that time. I did a huge amount of work. And I think that was wonderful because it really meant that I focused on honing the storytelling, focused on honing the quality of the work, focused on, making sure that I could get it out reliably and quickly and work well with the editors and, build some great relationships, which I did. And I'm just extremely thankful for that whole 8-year period, And again, I was able to say that to Dan last weekend and just sort of say, thanks to everyone really there, Jim Lee in particular for backing me right from the start, Dan for just consistently giving me one job after another, and all the editors that I worked with, Jessica Chen in particular was a delight, and it was just, it was great. It was a golden age for me. It totally changed my whole life again. It gave me it was a comeback. Some people say you never went away. But I did. I dropped off the radar in a lot of people's minds. I had a huge hit with the Gears of War comic in 2008. That was the biggest. People don't know this, but that was the biggest selling comic of 2008 that DC put out. But it's Gears of War. The reason it did that well is because an awful lot of gamers bought it.
Yeah.
And it was selling in GameStop or whatever the shop was called. And it was, it was on different. It was, selling to more than just the comic audience, and the comic world just generally didn't take any notice of that either, because it's it's a licensed property and it's a game property, and they tend not to be taken seriously because they're just seen as a sort of spin-off of those properties. But yeah, aside from that, I hadn't really done anything that was selling in any numbers or was getting me noticed. So people were like, well, where have you been? You haven't done anything since the Hulk or whatever, And I've done loads of things. It's just that nobody really read them in numbers. So yeah, it gave me my career back. I hadn't drawn a comic for 4 years, aside from the bits and bobs that I did for Mayflower. And I did, obviously I was very proud of Capstone, but that, again, I think I sold like 3,000 copies. It's not something to shout about in terms of numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And Diana gave me, that sold 135,000 copies. It's a massive difference.
Yeah, for sure.
And it introduced me to a lot of people who've not even seen my work before, which has happened again with the Conan stuff, funnily enough.
Yeah, I mean, so many of us, remember fondly. You mentioned, the Hulk, and I love this cover. It's one of the first cover. I think it was the third issue of Hulk that you did. Particularly, I love all the muscles in the back. I love kind of the atmosphere of it. But it also reminds me that you did that Man-Thing book with J.M. DeMatteis, which is a fantastic. And I think they finally collected it in trade, if I'm not mistaken, recently.
The book I did with DeMatteis, it was the Man-Thing book. Have they collected it? I haven't heard that they have.
I thought that they did. Maybe I'm thinking of something else. But anyway, if everybody, if you haven't checked it out and you want something weird and creepy, JM is a fantastic talent and a friend as well. So I had to shout that out. I was going back through your work and I came across that cover and I was like, I gotta shout this out.
The run that just got picked up. The Beat did a whole piece on that just this week, which was nice. On my Hulk run, it turned out I had one of the Beat writers was a big fan of that run, so that was unexpected and nice to see. And that is actually also my favourite cover from the Hulk run, the 8 issues that I did. I think though that I did that Man Thing cover there. And then that led on to a Black and White Man Thing story, which then led on to the Man Thing series with the Mattis. So there was a connection straight from this to that.
Yeah, because this was a two-part. Yeah, this was a two-part story, and the next cover is great too. When they're kind of fighting, grappling. It's fantastic. Well, we got to talk a little bit of holiday traditions, but one more thing that I wanted to throw up on the screen before we do that, and before I let you go, is the book you did with Garth, Batman Reptilian. One of the last things that you did at DC before you kind of moved on to doing Starhenge or what have you. Man, if you guys want like this creepy body horror Batman dialed up to 11 Halloween-y type story, it's this. And it really seemed like you and Garth were just having a blast, like pulling out all the stops when you guys did this.
We did. We had a great time on it, and it went really smoothly. It was funny. It was just like I was every day I got up and I worked on it, and then one day it was done, and I was like, oh my god, that went so smoothly, and without sort of any issue. It was one of those jobs that just really start to finish was a pleasure. We kind of envisaged it as an unofficial sequel to Arkham Asylum, hence the style of the whole thing. If you put the two next to each other, it is like this sort of comedy sequel, to that in a way. There's definitely a vibe. We wanted it to feel like it was in that same very twisted universe.
Yeah, I mean, your work definitely stands out. I mean, Dave McKean is a legend. You a little bit of a different style, but the other thing that's great about it is the way that Garth writes back. He's just such an asshole. He's just such a jerk, and it's great, unapologetically so. And that's where some of the humor comes in, because he's so over the top.
Yeah, and absolutely. Yeah, I'm not a Dave McKean lookalike, but there's definitely the influence of it there, in this, in just the mood and tone and the atmospherics, I think, if nothing else. But yeah, Garth's writing is very funny, and sometimes he's got such a strong sense of how it's going to all come together. It's really interesting. It's like you'll read the script and see the gag and go, okay, and then it's not until you've drawn it that the gag really lands, and then you laugh at it for the first time. It's like, oh, now I see it. Now I see that it does work. And we had a lot of there's a lot of funny stuff in it. Garth, every time I sent him a page, would have some witticism and some humorous comment about each page, especially when the Joker turned up, because he really hates the Joker. So he says that, I won't even repeat the words that he used on seeing the picture of the Joker for the first time. But yeah, that was good fun. It was actually, I mean, that one went so smooth and so quickly that DC, I thought it was about 4 issues into it, and they said, actually, can you just take a break and do 3 issues of Batman Catwoman and then come back to it? Which I did as well. So I got to slip a little 3-issue Tom King story in the midst of it, and then come back to it. And all of that was just like bang, bang, bang. It was like so much work for DC, and it was a lot of fun working. I loved working for DC. It felt like my comic home for a while there.
Yeah, and again, this is collected, everybody. It's Black Label, definitely for mature readers, though. Let me say that, but definitely one that's worth your time. Well, we did mention Starhenge a couple times. Your crater run that you did at at Image, um, and all based on continuing trade sales and what have you. But is this something you're hoping to get back to in the future?
Oh God, yeah. And that's another one. A lot of people didn't hear about it. So
Which is
I
crazy
would
because you
love
were
to.
promoting it on social media like crazy. I was promoting it like crazy, and there's still people that haven't heard of it.
Well, you know what? Social media, the reach is incredibly hard to get
Yeah,
these days,
yeah. The
especially if it's
algorithm
really down
is a
to you.
mystery.
You have no idea who's seeing it, who isn't seeing it, who it's reaching. And even if you do the paid reach, often it's going out to people who have no interest in comics whatsoever, and they
Yeah,
just why the hell they're getting this kind of weird stuff in their feed. Um, so yeah, it's really tough at the moment in terms of growing an audience. But what I'm finding is that for whatever reason, my audience is sort of really they've just been amazing. They sort of I feel like they've got my back, and so there's sort of a lot of sharing going on elsewhere and people talking elsewhere. Um, I haven't tended to be. In fact, I don't know if you saw it, but Gail Simone put up a really incredibly kind and generous post about a week ago, just about my work and how she felt that I didn't get anywhere near enough attention, which was uncalled for. And it's nothing to do with me for her to do that. It was extremely kind of her and generous of her. Um, and in that, a lot of the feedback was like, yeah, it's not fair. We tend to focus on stuff that gets a little bit of outrage, or is the press has got time for big news story arcs and things like that. Um, and yet, I've Starhenge is still finding new people, and I'm constantly seeing new people coming onto my various platforms and discovering my work for the first time, and then going back over stuff I've done before and finding the brave and the bold, and finding the Wonder Woman stuff and even the Hulk stuff, going way back. Wonder Woman had that effect of introducing me to a whole bunch of new people. The Conan work really has recently as well. That's pulled in a lot of people who are quite serious art fans, um, uh, because I put a stupid amount of work into
yeah,
those black and white pages, um, and I think that a lot of people are discovering that for the first time and working backwards, and that's what happened with Wonder Woman, and that's what happened with the Green Lantern, and that's what happened to some degree with Starhenge. It's certainly what's happening now with the Conan and the Spawn stuff. So I feel like oddly and almost unexpectedly, I'm managing to slowly grow my audience, and that's the hardest thing to do at the moment. It's felt like we've been just clinging to the people who've supported us for dear life for a number of decades, and growth has been almost impossible. Uh, but I feel like more and more people are talking about Starhenge, and Gail was particularly kind about Starhenge in that post that she did, and you know yeah, it's great that people are picking it up. It was offered again this month for the retailers. I have no idea if any retailers responded and ordered copies. I did a follow-up called All that really went under the radar and had tiny tiny figures. It was very disappointing, yeah, especially since I had tried to do a bit of fan service and not offer multiple covers,
yeah,
um, and that was a mistake actually. I hate to say that, but it does work,
yeah,
and in the end, that was a 60-page book, for which I got absolutely nothing. I didn't make a single penny from it. So that when you put it in those terms, that's 3 months' work,
hmm
um, and nothing. So you can't live on fresh air. You see ridiculous comments sometimes when you try to explain to people online that it's very hard for you to do a follow-up to something like this if nobody's actually buying it. And
Right.
then they go, "Oh, well, you should just do it for love. Don't
Yeah.
do it for money."
Yeah.
It's like you should be just happy doing it. And it's like, hang on, would you expect me to eat?
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Just waste away, in a garret. And it's such a strange concept that people think. What do they think we have? Like we go out for a 9 to 5 job as a whatever that might be, and then come home and churn out these things for nothing,
Yeah.
just for the love of it.
Yeah, it's insane. Well, hopefully people continue to discover Starhenge and you get a chance to get back to it because it's got a special place in my heart.
Oh, I will definitely be back to it. And again, this is all part of working on awareness. It's there. You can buy the book. If I can continue to grow awareness, and I made it available for free on my Substack as well, so people can read it there. The intention being with that is that, if it's free, then why not read it?
Yeah,
And if you enjoy it, then there's an opportunity there for me to, to build that audience again. And all will probably be part of the second book anyway, So when the collected Starhenge omnibus, the deluxe edition that we put out, hardback,
yeah,
I'm really
can't wait to
proud
get
of.
my hands. Can't wait to get my hands on
Yeah.
that. I mean,
Uh,
it's just the fact that one of the main characters has those roots in the Bay Area, California Bay Area, and that's where I went to college. That's where you lived when you were in California. So that's part of the why, it has such a special place for me because I'm so nostalgic. That was my college years, going to St. Mary's in Moraga near Concord and Walnut Creek. So yeah, I mean Diablo Valley and the mountain, and yeah, it's just I'll always love
yeah,
it for
a little
that
bit,
because
little bit
I
of
feel
history
yeah,
in there.
yeah, I feel like a personal connection to it. So great.
Well, seems to be my thing, doesn't it? Putting little bits of discovered history into these stories.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. Uh, well, we got to talk a little holiday traditions, and you may have some traditions that we here in the States aren't necessarily that familiar with, being from the UK. So as we're winding down here, Liam, tell us a little bit about your family's traditions around the holidays. Anything that kind of you brought from being a kid that you still do, in your own household, or yeah, what's Christmas like over there?
Oh, we have the tree up, and we have the lights, and we have all the good things. It's a very social time, Christmas. In Derby, in particular, we have a friend's birthday, which happens this Friday, this Saturday coming. That's always like our first day of proper Christmas kicking in, and then there seems to be drinks fairly regularly after that. We're having quite a quiet Christmas day with my wife's mother is coming over. She lives nearby, so she's coming round, and we're going to have Matilda, our daughter, and our youngest son, our middle son's in America. So they'll be over, and we'll be having a big dinner, and we will all be up. We like to have a family home day. Stick a couple of films on, have a few tipples. Possibly, I don't know what particular drinks I might be getting, but usually there's some port, and might be a bit of whiskey, and there might be bit of sherry, and definitely some beer, and definitely some wine. It's going to be a long,
Fantastic.
long day of tipples, uh, and whatever presents we have, and read for their books. We'll often have a sit around and look at our books for a little while, and we all do come down into the living room together, and the presents do go under the tree, and if we don't light a fire, we'll have one on the TV, which became the California tradition,
Yeah.
crackling in the background. Um, and we will have, of course, a big all day long mix of music playing, uh, inevitably, festively. Uh,
Yeah,
and
holiday
yeah,
holiday music all all
yeah.
month all month long, or do you save it just
Oh,
for the day of?
well, no, it's on and off. You don't want to overkill it, you know. It's we've had a couple of evenings already with some of those tunes playing, and I will almost certainly end up with a Santa hat on. That's
Fantastic.
inevitable.
Well,
Yeah, so that's all coming up, and then there'll be Boxing Day with eating all that, probably a walk and probably you know eating what's the leftovers.
yeah,
Uh, but no, I'm a big fan of Christmas. It's family time. It always has been for family and community. Um, I'm all about both of those things. So I fully intend to be popping down to my local or locals. We've got a few locals around here, no doubt. And I know I'm having a little drink with my brother and sister, which is nice too, because we just like to grab a little bit of time for just the siblings,
yeah,
um, if we can. So yeah, there's lots of things to look forward to, but it's yeah,
that's
I've got
awesome.
that.
Uh, yeah, well, it sounds like it's going to be a wonderful time, and of course, I wish you and your family all the best, all the happy
Well, likewise.
holidays, and prosperous New Year, as it were.
Yeah, and the same to you, Jace. What are your plans?
Uh, you know, growing up, my mom's side of the family, both of my grandparents born in Mexico, so very very Mexican traditional Christmas. So menudo in the morning for which is basically a hearty Mexican soup. Everybody that has tripe as a main ingredient, which is like
Nice.
yeah, intestines, stomach lining, what have you, and then tamales all day with homemade salsa and mole and what have you.
I
So
like the
yeah.
sound of that.
Yeah, so we continue that. Um, Not going back to California this year to see the rest of my family. Although because I live in Phoenix here, same place that my mom lives. She's leaving this week to go back, and she'll spend Christmas in California with the rest of my siblings. But my son and his fiance were supposed to come. They live in Vegas, and it's about a 5-hour drive, and they were supposed to come, but he's got to work now. We just found out last
Uh,
night, so it's going to be kind of a small get together, just be my wife and my daughter and I. Um, but yeah, we do Christmas huge. I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I mean, we have a full size tree in every room. We go crazy. My wife loves Christmas. It's her favorite time of year. And ever since I've known her, and she's added to it each year until probably maybe 3 years ago, where she finally was like, there's no more room for anything. But she would add decorations every year. She has a little Christmas village with little light up buildings and a train that drives around through it. And yeah, she would do this every year, and we would be the only ones that would see it. So I think it was 2018. I finally told her, I was like, we need to start throwing a Christmas party. So my coworkers, your coworkers, our friends, everybody can come over and see this amazing thing that you do, making our house look so beautiful. So yeah, we started doing that in 2018. Took a couple years off for the pandemic, but we had it again this year on the first Saturday of December. We call it cookies, cocoa, and cocktails because I'll come up with like a new cocktail menu every year with like 3 or 4 drinks that were um, really popular because I used to bartend way back in the day. And the drink this year that was so popular was a campfire mule. Um, but like traditionally, mule's gonna have vodka or whatever. But I did a campfire mule that had smoked bourbon. I don't know if you've ever had bourbon that's been
okay,
smoked.
nice.
A little bit of maple syrup, and then ginger beer, which is kind of the mule part. And for a garnish, I toasted marshmallows that you get for s'mores, and so it was served with this toasted marshmallow, and it went like gangbuster. Like
I bet.
it went like 10 and I have a friend that comes over that actually bartends, so I get a chance to like meet, because the first few years I did the bartending and I didn't get a chance to visit with as many people as I wanted. So
That's awesome.
I have a friend that comes over and does it, and he was like, yeah, like I was, which, because I always ask him at the end which drink was most popular. He's like, that campfire mule like was 10. I made 10 times more of those than I made any. So now I know I have to have that, because sometimes I'll do repeats. I know I'll have to have the campfire mule on the menu next year because it was such a big hit. But yeah, we love Christmas around here. My wife, I mean, there's so many decorations, and to put up a tree in every room and decorate, like we start right after Halloween. We have to start decorating to get it all ready in time, and that's when the Christmas music starts as well. So yeah, we really stretch it out. And then I tell her it's like the saddest time of the year for me is like, a day or two after New Year's when everything goes away and their house looks so plain, because you get used to, all the lights and the trees and everything. It's a shock to the system because it goes up slowly, so you don't realize. But when it goes away all at once, and it's
All at
just
once.
yeah, it's a
I
shock to
know,
the
I hate it
system.
too. I hate it too. We always there's a couple of lights in specific places that we leave up all year just so that it's not a total shock when it comes
Yeah,
down. Create a nice little bit of atmosphere in the kitchen and in the living room as well. So there's always a little bit of twinkle there.
yeah. Well,
We get added twinkle at Christmas.
a few years ago, my wife started there's one that's called a pencil tree because it's very narrow that she leaves up all year round and
Yeah.
decorates, based on like the holidays. So 4th of July or Thanksgiving or Halloween or summertime. It has these little watermelon ornaments on it and everything. So, but I don't know. Like as our daughter's gotten older, my wife was saying the other day, she's like, I don't really think Aspen cares if I leave that tree up. So I was like, well, I mean, do it or don't do it. Like I'm not going to tell you to do it because it is work. You got to climb up in the attic and dig out whatever particular decorations. But I was like, I enjoy it, but whatever's going to
Oh,
make you
then
happy.
you got to have the tree.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
Maybe not in every room, but
Yeah,
I'm with you. I'm a sucker for it. It's why not?
yeah. So if you're ever in the Phoenix area, or you ever feel
Yeah,
like
I
taking
know.
a trip early
I feel like
December,
I'm missing out.
you're always the invitation is extended, and you're always
My,
more than
my
welcome.
son is actually running party bikes in Phoenix at the moment. He's riding he does that over the holiday season, so he's actually there with
Oh wow,
big one.
fantastic. Does he have plans for Christmas? He's more than welcome to come over. He's probably be hanging out with his friends. He wouldn't want to come over and hang out with the us old folks. But
Well, he's very sociable, I suggested.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, thanks again, Liam. It's great to catch up with you, man. It's always such a great time to have you on.
Likewise,
And to everybody out there in the audience, on behalf of Liam and myself, we want to wish you a healthy and happy holiday season. And thank you all for taking a little time out of the holiday season to join us, whether it be on YouTube or the audio-only feed. We really appreciate it.
absolutely. Thanks for having me on again, Jace. It's as you say, always a pleasure, and we should do it again.
Yeah, yeah,
We
definitely.
will.
Definitely, yeah. Like, who knows? Maybe a few more issues of Spawn Dark Ages, I won't be able to resist reaching out and being like, all right, we need to come. Because here's the other thing: once a few more issues come out, then we can get a little bit more spoilery and talk details of story. Being that
Yeah.
it's only the first issue, I didn't want to get too into the details. But once a few, or maybe when the trade comes out, we'll dive in. So anyway, thanks again, Liam. So great to see you.
Pleasure, mate. You take care.
Yep. And
Merry
again.
Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, everybody out there in the audience. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.